Hey guys, my name's Adam, this is Ian, we're from Chisholm Institute here at AEG headquarters. We're here today to talk to you about drop saws and the safe use of drop saws, but also how to actually put the documentation together about using them through your swim statements. Ian?
Yeah, that's one of the key issues that we have as a training provider. We've got to do a swim statement before each class to make sure that and there's some confusion about how it all works. So we're going to hopefully clarify some of that today.
Yeah, the safe work method statement, or the swim as we call it, they're designed to actually be used in industry for high risk work. Obviously, looking at a drop saw, it isn't high risk, but within a training environment where we've got multiple students, we class it as high risks. So it's very important that we fill out all the correct documentation. And today we're going to show you how to fill that documentation out to be safe, as well as when you go to actually use the tool, you'll actually have steps to follow. One of the biggest things that we've got to make sure that the document is filled out correctly with names, details, and when you get down to the nitty gritty, as we like to say, your task, your hazard and your risk control measure. So what you're gonna do, how you're gonna do it, what could go wrong, and how you're gonna make sure that you're safe.
So let's talk about the task, because there's a bit of misconception about that. Some people put down all sorts of strange things, but the task is going to be, cutting timber with a drop saw.
Yep.
Okay, then we have to have a look at what the hazard can be with doing that. Obviously the first hazard would be electrocution, it comes to mind. Risk control measure, make sure that the tool is tagged and that the insulation is in good working order. And you can see by this, it is a good condition saw, it's been tagged and it's right to go.
Yep. First thing you'd look at when you put your task down is you do your pre-inspection. So you look at the tool and you make sure everything works. So you check your leads, make sure there's no nicks, no cuts, make sure it does have a current tested tag on it. Then you would check all your guards. You'd make sure that if it's a sliding saw, that the slide works well, it doesn't jam, it doesn't stick. You'd make sure that your adjustment at the front with your lever, your guard comes up and you goes back. So you do your pre-inspection as your task. While you're doing that, your next thing would be what could go wrong. Might be that the lead's got a nick, the guard jams, or the saw doesn't slide. How would you solve that, which is your control measures? It'd be don't use the lead or don't use the saw, get the lead replaced. Might be oil or clean the guard. It might be oil or grease up the slide to make sure that it's used safely. Again, using your correct PPE is vital to using one of these saws.
So if we were going to talk about another hazard, the hazard would be lacerations, I think would come to mind. And one of the big things is I want to make sure I'm trained in using the saw before I use it. Yep. I'm not going to go up to this for the first time and go, I wonder how this works. I'm going to make sure that I'm fully comfortable, I understand it, and I'm competent to use the saw.
Yep. So there's a couple of things that you've got to be mindful with when you're using the drop saw or the sliding compound or the compound saw, is using all the safety features and knowing all the safety features. You've got a back rest here, which allows your timber to go onto the back to stop it from jamming. The blade turns in a rotational circle, so it actually cutting into the timber, it's going to push it against the backrest. You've also got some symbols either side here and here that actually say don't put your hands. So we see so many people trying to hold timber. Ian, can you demonstrate holding the timber for us?
That some people get down and they actually get it to their thumb and that way too close to that blade.
So if you have a look, it actually tells you that you can't put your hands past this, and that's why you've got something like the saw guide or the saw rest. So you can jam, you can push that down, lock that in place, tighten it up, and that is actually holding it for you. So your hands don't need to be anywhere near the blade. You'd be surprised how many times we have had to stop students from putting their hands that close to the saw blades because they think it's not going to happen, they think they're going to be fine, and the saw jumps, the saw bites, and people take nicks out of their fingers and their thumbs because they just get it too close. Use it properly, use it safely. When you're writing in your swim statement, make sure you write these things down. The timber could jump, the saw could bounce, the saw could bite. All of these things are potential hazards. It's a task, it's a hazard, it's a control. That's what we're aiming for.
That was just brought to mind. I was thinking one of the classics for having the saw biting is they get the saw and it's down and trying to cut before it's even got up to speed. It is vital that that saw has got up to its full speed before it goes into the timber.
Yeah, you don't want to have the saw, as Ian just showed, you don't want to have the saw down started here, and you get people that bring it forward and they go, oh yeah, that's where I'm going to cut, and they don't realise that as they turn it, because there's a gap, they hit the saw, but the blade itself is actually going to spin around and hit the timber as it kicks, and that's where it'll damage your timber. It'll probably damage the saw, and it'll probably scare the crap out of you as well. So just be mindful that the saw's started away, let's get to full revs, and then cut through nice and slowly. And then once you're finished, you let the saw come up, the guard will come back up, which is protected, then you can take your off-cut piece away, or your good bit of timber, whichever one you want to do.
One of our real problems that we have, take that off for a minute, is this. You'll see it occasionally, and people will cut like so, and we call it cross-handing, and that is an absolute recipe for disaster. That saw comes back, and hence a really bad cut.
Usually happens when they're a left-handed or right-hand, they feel more comfortable with their other hand, so crossing it over. So the saws are designed for left and right-handers, so it's quite easy to use. So you just got to make sure that your hands are free. Absolutely correct.
And one of the other hazards I'd like to mention is people trying to do that. That saw is not designed for ripping. Ripping is cutting along the grain, and we see this sort of caper a bit, trying to cut wedges and bits and pieces, and that is just not designed for it and cause all sorts of problems. And of course, we get people out there that think it's a good idea to take that off.
The biggest thing that we've got to be mindful of, guys, is that while you're using the saw, you use it in a safe manner. This saw, any of these tools and equipment will make you a lot of money if you use them correctly. If you injure yourself and you're out of action, you're not making any money, you're not creating any work, you're not doing any job. So use it properly, use it safely, follow all the instructions, follow the instructions by your trainers and by your teachers and by your potential employers when you get them out there, and they're going to show you how to go through and use all their tools and equipment properly. Make sure you're safe, but make sure you document it all as well, because with the Safe Work Method Statement, the SWIM, if it's documented, it means you understand how to use it. If it's not documented, you might just, no worries, come along, do your cut and injure yourself, which means you haven't been trained properly or you're not confident. It's all about training, confidence and application. You can do those, you'll be fine.
The one other thing I'd like to mention too, PPE. For using this saw, I've got to make sure I'm wearing hearing protection and I'm wearing eye protection, and inside a building, clear safety glasses and something that is Australian standards for my ears.
Yep. Usually you'll find with all the manufacturer's instructions or the user guides or the manuals, it'll have on them that these tools and equipment have to be used with the correct PPE, so eye protection, ear protection, there may be gloves, depending on, but you need to make sure you look through the user guide or the owner's manual and following those rules. It's very easy not to put on your eye protection because you're only doing a quick cut. That's when you're recipe for disaster. You'll guaranteed something will flick up and get in your eye. Hearing protection, constant use, the noise level. So just make sure you do the right thing. And again, they get put on your SWIM statement. That is the control measure. That is the bit that makes you safe, is you wear the right PPE. And then away you go. And if you use it correctly and you use it safely, everything's a dream. Life's a dream. The job's easy. Makes life easy for you.
Last one I want to add, putting the timber on the saw, making sure that the bow is down. If I have it up the other way with the bow up, as that saw cuts through, it'll jam onto it and then cause you a bit of problem. But other than that, I'm good to go.
Happy?
Happy.
Happy days. Enjoy.